Well, we're live. I've pressed it. We'll be on soon.
So can we tell when we're actually on?
There'll be a lag, so we'll probably be on before we know it. So let's just be on.
Okay. What a great... Are we going for it?
Let's just see. Let's have a look. And yep, we're live. Here we are.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, we're in lockdown
Again.
And so what a great time to actually be in conversation about this very thing, relationships in lockdown. And also, something we will also talk about is for people who are single in lockdown.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a vast array of challenges and issues that are being presented. But what I was just saying to Belinda before we jumped on this call was, Belle's my relationships coach. I has been since 2018 when I went through a separation. But the very first thing in March when we were notified of COVID, the very first thing I went to, and I've got goosebumps when I think about it, was how are people going to go in relationship in lockdown? And I feel quite emotional because I think that this is for a lot of people a make or break. And there are potentially a lot of people that are thinking it's break, but as we want to talk about, it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Yeah, it's a really tough spot, and statistically there have been more divorces than ever before, and it is happening. It is happening. People are breaking up, and those people who've worked with me or heard anything from me before will know I'm not the type of relationship coach that wants to save every relationship. Not all, relationships ending isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's the time to end. But right now, and I think probably one of the most important things we need to talk about is that the situation that we're living in is not a healthy one. It's not a healthy one for anyone's state of mind. Even the rate of, very sadly, the rate of suicide, mental illness, depression, anxiety has also skyrocketed. So this is just indicative of how, even as a solo person, just on your own, this environment that we're living in right now is not healthy and it's not normal. And so that's, as human beings, we are designed to survive and thrive in a community. And so being in isolation like this is affecting our individual health, but it is absolutely going to affect our relationships as well.
And so I know what I'm hearing as far as what it's affecting or the challenges that it's raising. And so something we've talked about, and I'd love us to delve into it. A lot of people are saying that they're being triggered.
Yeah. Can
we talk about triggers?
Let's talk about triggers, because I love triggers. I love talking about them.
You like when you're in a trigger, when you're being triggered?
I think talking about triggers me sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, so look, and just really briefly, like for people who are watching maybe who don't know what triggers are, I can't imagine anyone will be watching us that don't know what they are, but things happening, that having experiences that elicit a worn out program or a worn in program in oneself. Would you say that's a good explanation, Lisa, for trigger?
Yeah.
Cool. So a lot of people are being triggered, and why are they being triggered? Well, actually, I think that's actually the point that we need to talk about, is that there's a big school or a big camp of people who believe that when we're triggered by someone or something, then it is not just an opportunity, but a sign for us to deal with that thing within ourselves. And we have to do it. It's like karmically designed for us to do that. And if we don't do it, then we're failing. If we don't deal with the trigger, we're failing. I don't prescribe to that belief.
All the time, or particularly right now?
Good discernment there. But to be honest, all the time. Let me explain. I do believe that when we're triggered, it is an opportunity for us to look at that thing within ourselves and potentially deal with it, change it, evolve beyond it. I do believe that all triggers are an opportunity for that. Let me just talk around it a little bit. One of those opportunities, though, one of the opportunities that it gives us is sometimes the opportunity to walk away and say, I don't need to deal with this type of behavior in my life. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the trigger is for us to actually stand up for ourselves and say, no, I'm not taking this on. Mm-hmm. So it's not always to say, oh, okay, well, you've made me feel angry and therefore I need to look at my anger because my anger is not healthy. That might be the case, but sometimes the opportunity is to look at our anger and say, oh, this makes me angry. Your behavior makes me angry, and I'm okay with that, and that's a healthy anger. It's a protective anger. So I'm out of here. Now that can be a healthy way to speak to a trigger that occurs. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing is that it might actually be an opportunity for us to go deeper and look at those things within ourselves and how those reflections are coming from within us, because that's often the case with the trigger. But triggers are not a stop sign and a karmic directive that you have to do it. It's not a sign that this is what I have to do right now, and if I don't do it, I'm failing. No, it's an opportunity. So like any other, dis-ease or disconnection within ourselves, to deal with it and to heal it, we need to be in an appropriate environment. So if you cut your hand out in the Amazon and it's gushing blood, you need to deal with that. Now, doing it whilst you're in a mud bath is not a great idea, right? Because it's full of bacteria that's foreign to your body. So you need to go into a clean, sterile, healthy, controlled environment, clean it out, wrap it up, and then you can go back into the bush if you want to. It's the same thing with our triggers. If we are in a relationship and that relationship is triggering our sense of abandonment or our sense of fear or whatever it might be for us, then to deal with that trigger, we need to be in a safe environment to do so, a healthy environment to do so. And being in lockdown is not a healthy environment to deal with our triggers.
This is exactly I'm like, this is the biggest challenge, isn't it? I'm not going to say there's no space, because there's always space, but it's a challenge to create the space, to have the space, aside from the fact that you're in a confined area. There's no opportunity to get out and actually just to feel spacious and to allow something new to come in, or to see a different perspective. But then for a lot of us also who are in relationship, we've also got the added challenge of being a parent full-time. And that coupled, I think, is what is making a lot of people feel, I want to say, crazy.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, it is actually making us crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's really great that you bring up those distinctions, because they do actually create two equally challenging but different environments. For the couples who are just together in the house, those of us with children have this fantastical idea, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice? They're getting to do their work if they're working and watch movies and have conversations and drink wine. And whilst that is the case for some, it's also what you said, it can feel like you're trapped. And you can't, I love the way you used your body then. It's like, you can't just, and that's the case for a lot of us, is that we actually need spaciousness. We need physical, mental and emotional space in order to get some new perspective. But more than that, even more than that, that's just one tiny element of what the issue is here. The other thing is, for a healthy organism, for a healthy psyche, we need to have interaction with other friends, with people, with other women, with other men, because their filters, their insight feeds us. We get things from them that we don't get from our partners. When we're not getting those things from our partners, we bring all of our needs and all of our tensions into the relationship. So it's not just that we don't get space, but it's also that we're not getting fed in any other way. So our organism, if you think of yourself like a psyche, a mind, a body, a spirit, all those things need something, and our world is designed in a way to support this organism. And those things, those essential things, space, connections with other people, so community, the freedom to create, these things are not being easily attained at the moment. And so our organism, our psyche, our body, our mind, it is not in its optimal situation. So of course this is going to affect our relationships. And then you come into the situation where you are with your partners, you're in that space, whatever's going on inside of you, you're going to look at that person, and whatever you're not seeing, you're going to see it in them. They're going to trigger you. All of it's going to be triggered. We're laughing because it's funny now.
And also because in a reasonably new relationship, you would say that should be flourishing and soaring. I am getting triggered so much. So, it doesn't matter how many tools you have in the box right now.
Yeah.
It's taking a lot of effort to overcome myself to maintain a healthy relationship.
Oh, it's so difficult. And you're right. It doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't matter how many tools you have when you don't have a healthy environment. Like if we talk about the cut hand again, back in the Amazon, you can have all the Band-Aids and bandages in the world, but if you can't get yourself into a clean and sterile environment to tend to it, it's just going to keep on getting infected, right? So I do want to, not just now, but in a moment, I do want to speak about some extra tools that people may not have considered that will actually help. Yeah, and they're not the kind of tools probably that people have considered, but there are some things that can help. But before we go there, I want to talk to the other thing you were speaking about, which was couples. So couples who are with each other and they don't have children, and those of us with kids have this fantasy idea of how lovely it would be for them. But the truth is that they're in such a confined environment, and because they're so close and because they're not in a healthy environment for themselves, everything is being triggered internally, and then that's going to be projected or reflected by your partner, and so you're going to see it all in them. Now, this is not to say that some of the triggers that are coming up for you are real things that you actually would benefit from dealing with. I'm not saying that that's not the case.
And I think this is really, so that's part of where I went to initially when we went into lockdown back in March, was there are, I imagine, I'm guessing, I'm assuming, I think correctly, that there are a lot of relationships that are unhealthy, that were unhealthy before lockdown. And so people are being forced to recognise, or not, or to try and avoid, but it's very hard to avoid that when you're in a confined place. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. I'm just aware I can't see if anyone's on here, so I'm sorry if you're saying hello and what have you. We actually can't see it because we're streaming from Zoom, but we'll keep checking in to see if there's any questions, and we're happy to answer any questions. Yes. So there are some real issues. Yeah, if your relationship is not doing well and you're going to be in lockdown, then that shit is going to hit the fan. Absolutely. And so what do you do? Okay. Should we go there now? Should we dive into that?
And I'm just going to say hello, just because I've jumped on, to Annette.
Annette,
hello, beautiful. And Claire. Claire's bring on the trigger talk. Bring on the trigger talk. I do think this is very relevant, because there are people that would be questioning their marriage, their relationship, marriage, partnership, whatever you'd like to call it right now. And it is relevant.
Yeah. Okay. So let's break it down. I want to say the kind of overarching thing to consider here is this: if you're unsafe in your relationship, if there's any sense of abuse, then you need to get out. That's an overarching. If your relationship is abusive too, you do know. If you don't know, ring a helpline, because it's essential that you are safe. Now, and abuse can become a little bit muddied. The waters can become muddied because there's such a thing as emotional abuse and mental abuse as well. But you do know if there's abuse occurring in your relationship, and if you're unsure, you do need to look into that. You do need to call a helpline. You need to get help now. Aside from that, if you're in a situation where you feel like you can feel like you're being abused in that you feel like you're constantly like just going through it. It's like you don't know, you're questioning, you don't like your partner at the moment. He's pissing you off or she's pissing you off all the time. You feel like they're asking too much of you. You feel like they're always down or depressed. That's another thing that's happening at the moment. You feel like they're not fun anymore, all of those things. And then even questioning deeper things like, I don't know if our values align. I don't know if we're on the same page as each other. The first, well, I guess it's the second piece of advice that I really, really want to extend to people, and I want this to really sink in too. Now, this is especially for, wherever you are. In Melbourne, we're in Melbourne at the moment, and we've been given another 6-week lockdown date, 5 weeks, but who's counting?
5 weeks today. I'm counting.
But, and who knows if that'll be longer or shorter, but that's what we've got to work with. So wherever you are, whatever kind of time frame you've got, what I really want to say to people is don't make any decisions in the next 5 weeks. And remind yourself, let it be like a spiritual practice to, whenever something comes up, to speak to that part of yourself. Now, that part of yourself is either a healthy or unhealthy part that's trying to keep you safe. For some people, it's a healthy part that's saying, hey, this actually isn't in alignment for me. For some people, it's an unhealthy part that's used to having unhealthy relationships, and so it's projecting into this one. Now, do the work. Tune into the work that we're doing. I'm giving away so much free information. Lisa's got an amazing YouTube channel, The Good News Guide. She has lots of experts on there. Tune into as many things like this as you can to start learning and to start discerning, is it me projecting, or is it actually something real? But aside from that, tell that part of yourself when it comes up in the relationship, I hear you. I hear you. And write it down even so that it knows that you're listening, and have a conversation with it. Make a deal and say, I hear you and I want to tend to the thing you're speaking to me of. I appreciate you being here. For the next 5 weeks, I don't have the tools to support this process that we need to engage in. So here's the date, write it down, and we will have this conversation in 5 weeks.
I love that. And I love that because it's also an opportunity to really get it out of the body, to actually be able to, and also to go back and see what is it like, because I do actually think, as much as it is a massive challenge, it's an incredible opportunity during this time to really look at your relationship, and either to take it to the next level through this process beyond, because obviously it's very, very challenging during this time, or to recognize it is not in alignment moving forward for either of you.
Yeah, exactly. And for such, this isn't to say, I'm not here to say that if you're really clear that this isn't working, then you should stay for the next 5 weeks. I'm not even saying that. This is for the people who are confused, which is a lot of people.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's one really essential tool for everybody. And this can be transferred not just to relationships, it's going to be transferred to a lot of things right now, but what we're talking about is your relationship. So just have that conversation, have a book, write down all the things. You'd be surprised how much your mind will be willing to get off your back if you engage that conversation and promise that it'll happen, and have that date in your diary. The other thing to consider is, this is kind of speaking to the people who are in a relationship where you're committed. So this is the kind of stuff that's going to come up for a lot of people who are questioning whether they want to be in the relationship or not, right? Now, there's other people who are in relationship, and this is like, for instance, myself and my husband, we're not questioning whether this is the right relationship or not. We know it is. But he's pissing me off and I'm pissing him off sometimes. Like that's, that's normal. And look, if I'm entirely honest, the hardest thing for us at the moment is because we do have a small child. He's still running his businesses and has employees. So that means I'm unable to run my business really very much because there's full care of Caleb. And I've had some health challenges myself and been really pushing through some massive healing, which means I need his extra support. So our big challenge at the moment is that we're just getting through. We don't have time to have a conversation or connect or even have dinner. And by the end of the night, we're just exhausted and have to go to sleep. So Our issue isn't so much that we're arguing or triggering or anything like that. Our issue is, our biggest challenge at the moment is just not having any juice in our relationship. So I want to speak just really briefly to that, to those of you who are in a relationship where you're not really questioning necessarily, or there's not like big triggers, but it's feeling a bit, to those people, the tool or the advice I want to give is this. Think back to before lockdown and ask yourself, are you committed to being in this relationship? Now, there'll be people, a lot of people who'll say, yeah, of course I am. We are committed. Ask yourself, what are you committed to? Are you committed to each other? Are you committed to being in love? What's your commitment? If that commitment is still really clear, but you feel finding the relationship hard, then that's a really good indicator, a really good situation for you to do the 5-week thing. Because it's like, well, we're committed. So we need to get through this because this is really challenging us. And it's challenging for very good reasons. We're all mentally, emotionally, spiritually challenged. So just remember your commitment. Like, you're in this relationship, you love each other, you like each other, you have, shared goals and visions, you know that your relationship works. And right now it's a bit meh. You know what? It's going to be a bit meh. That's just how it is. So remember your commitment.
That's huge, because when you come back and anchor back into the feeling of that feeling of the commitment you've made to each other, that's what you're working with.
Yeah.
And so and understanding, and the thing that really keeps coming up for me is, how can I bring more compassion and more softness to myself during this time, knowing it is just a moment, a few more than a moments in time, until something else changes and we're not in such a crazy space. But how can I be softer? And also that with my partner, how can I just bring more softness to this space?
Yeah, well, it's a big one, isn't it? I think one of the biggest issues one of the biggest challenges that we're having at the moment is, you're either going to be in the frame of mind of really making the most of the situation we're in, or you're going to be in the frame of mind of waiting for the situation to change. And waiting for the situation to change is probably not the best way forward.
I agree. And I wonder what what do people do then? Because it's like anything, waiting for anything.
And this is good that you bring this up, Lisa, because I wanted to speak about this because we've spoken about how the current environment in which we're living is not healthy, and so we need to be not making any big decisions. Give yourselves a break, give it the timeline. Now, having said that, what can we do to create a healthier environment, to make the most health out of the environment that we're in? Because that's important, and it's like, let's go back to the cut hand in the Amazon. There's no sterile doctor's office or anywhere to go. So what do? You create a healthy environment to go and clean your hand in. So rather than thinking about, how do I have this conversation with my partner to work out the issues and triggers we've got? No, what we need to do is, how can I bring in more, what you said, more compassion, more patience, more softness, more care, more love, more health, more wholeness into the situation? It's a really good question. And that is where the focus should be. So give yourself the timeline, talk to that part of yourself, say, we'll deal with that, and write down all the things that come up. And in the meantime, put your focus on creating a healthy environment. So what are some of the things to do to make a healthy environment? Well, I want to talk to creating more compassion and softness. I think that's important. I think, however, that's the second level. The first level of action we need to take is to speak to those parts of ourselves that are being starved through this lifestyle, the parts of ourselves that are essential that are being starved. So community. Having regular conversations And preferably FaceTime with people is essential, with your girlfriends and with your male friends or whoever you are. It's essential. And I mean, I say this myself, and even I don't do it as often as I should. You know, you should at least once a week try and have a group get together with some friends. And every day or every other day, you should be talking to a friend or a family member.
I think I skipped over it, and I'm glad you brought that up. I skipped over it because I do it every day. So I'm not feeling, I mean, a lot of people are talking about human connection, or connection with friends. And because, you know, of my show, I'm in conversation with extraordinary people that are all very close and dear to me. So I'm not missing that, but I think that's absolutely, well,
it's essential. It's essential.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the key elements to creating a healthy psyche. So you know, there's no point in trying to create compassion and love and care for yourself if your psyche's unhealthy. So creating community and group conversations is a really great thing too. And when I say group, it might just be 2 other people, because there's a dynamic in that that's really nourishing and inspires creativity and thoughtfulness. And there's a dynamic of, you know, entering into conversation, sitting back and listening that we miss out on when it's just 1, 2 people. So having some group conversations is really important, and having daily, if possible, if not every other day, a conversation with someone. That's number 1, because it's number 1 that we're missing out on.
And I suppose, just jumping ahead, and I think you might have touched on it, was when we're having that need met, then that takes away from our partner needing to fill that need when they can't.
100%.
And then taking it out on them potentially because we're not having that need. So
exactly,
it's really, I get it.
It's essential. And then the next thing is, of course, exercise. I don't think too many people are lacking exercise. The other thing is a lot of people aren't sleeping. A lot of people aren't sleeping. A lot of reasons. We can go really cosmic on that. Because there is some cosmic reasons, you know, planetary and what have you. But also we're probably, a lot of people, I mean, the obvious one is that people are worrying. But in addition to that, a lot of people aren't exhausting themselves in the ways that they're used to. They're not exercising as much. They're not using their brains as much. So probably for a lot of people, sleep isn't as necessary, like as much sleep isn't as necessary. Good sleep is absolutely essential. But, you know, if you're used to having 8 hours, maybe you only need 6 right now. But what I recommend for that is do whatever you need to do to get some good sleep. Everybody's different. Some of the kind of tried and tested things are making sure that first thing in the morning you go outside and get some sunlight on the top of your head. A lot of people aren't doing that at the moment. They're just staying indoors because it's cold. Get outside, get some sunlight. And when I say sunlight, just light from the sun, not from, you know, lights overhead. And if you're not sleeping, stay in bed and rest. A lot of people think, oh, I'll get up and do something. But what happens then is that your brain goes straight into a awake brain state, and then you're not rejuvenating. So if you're not sleeping, at least just be restful in bed. Enjoy being in bed. Think about all those times when you've had to get up to go to work and the alarm's gone off and you're so pissed off, and you know that feeling you just want to go back into. Just do that. Just stay in bed and luxuriate in being in bed. Don't worry about not getting enough sleep. Instead, just be restful. That's another important thing.
Can I add something just from the sleep?
God, please do. Yeah.
Because it's been instrumental and monumental for me and a number of other people, is using the frequency music that
yes.
proposed. So Greg is the founder of Signs Music, and his music is extraordinary. And so I play his album at night, throughout the whole night, which is called Sonic Tonic, and it goes for like 8 hours. And it's all theta brainwaves. It takes you into theta brainwaves. So it is incredible. And the other one is Alter Perspectives, which is the black. There's 2. There's a white album and a black album, but the Alter Perspectives is the black. I think that goes for about 5.5 hours, and that's to run overnight. So they are phenomenal. You just have them in the background.
They really are. Can you like provide a link or something in the comments after this so that people can find that? Because Lisa shared it with me actually, and it was amazing. The one for anxiety, I put it on in the bath, because when you're in water, it expands the frequency, right? And so I put it on when I'm in the bath, lights off, and it was absolutely amazing. And I've used the sleep one myself, and it is really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. I'll definitely pop the link. Okay,
Thank you.
keep going. So sleep.
So they're just the things about what we need to try and do is recreate our healthy lifestyle within the lockdown. So if you're the kind of person who sees people regularly, you need to see them regularly. If you only see people normally once every few weeks, then maybe you don't need to speak to people as often. We need to have fun as well, like fun just for fun's sake. So I know people, myself as well, I've been involved in some online games, and I don't mean like this games, I mean like you get onto Zoom and there's these ridiculous games you can play. They're so funny. Drink a bottle of wine, they're having wine, do things that are just fun. And for some of us A-type personalities like myself, who are really just more interested in getting shit done, you have to sometimes really push yourself and go, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. I could be doing something else. And it's always really helpful. So you need to bring that into your life. If you're a creative kind of person, do something creative. If you have a hobby, keep doing that hobby or start a new hobby. I'm doing online singing lessons and online piano lessons. I learned how to play Old MacDonald. I mean...
And the other thing I was just thinking of that I've suggested to a few people is actually this will work for some people, is that each morning to actually have a plan, not a plan actually, or like a detailed plan, but what would you like? How would you like to feel at the end of the day? What would you like to achieve? What are some of the things that you can put into the day that are actually going to leave you feeling at the end of the day when you jump into bed, actually feeling greater than you could if you don't intentionalize that? Because I think that otherwise people are just going through the day and going through the motions and waiting for the day to finish, and then there's another day down.
That's right. And, I actually think that having a weekly schedule is actually really helpful, like a specific schedule. And, you can move around in that a little bit. But for some people, they're just waking up and not knowing what to do with themselves. So actually having a daily and weekly schedule. We have one. I have one with my son, and we've drawn pictures next to the word so he knows what's next. And he goes, Mummy, what time is it now? And he goes and looks at the schedule, and it's great. And we meander out of that schedule at times, but it gives some structure to the day. And we like structure. Our mind likes structure because we feel safe within structure, and then we feel we can kind of relax and move around it a little bit. Now, these things don't sound like we're speaking to relationships, but we are, because the reason the relationships are so hard right now is because your living environment, when I say environment, not just your house, I mean the way we're living is not healthy for an individual, which means that no relationships can be healthy if you're not healthy in yourself. So really do whatever you can to recreate a structure within your life that feeds you as an individual person. That's the first thing. Anything else is secondary when it comes to relationships. You have to do that first.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. In amongst that, we say, okay, we've got, a little self that's going, this over here, isn't it? Okay, a little self that's banging on about what's going on in my relationship. This isn't good, and I'm not liking this about him, and this isn't working, and we say, okay, I hear you, I love you, I appreciate you. I'm not in an environment that can support what you're talking to me about right now. So I'm writing it down very specifically, and on this date, and you give a specific date, we're going to look at it. And then already we've got a bit of space. And now let's look at the relationship and say, okay, we also need to take all expectations of your relationships right now. They don't need to be sexy. They don't need to be fun. They don't need to be fulfilling, all of those things. Now,
but they could be. But they can. I mean, I'm just saying they don't have to be, but they could be.
They could, and they probably will be in ways, and especially when you take all of this stuff off and you're feeding yourself, then those things are going to creep back in again. But the mind is just, you're in this little tiny hole and looking at this person and everything's reflecting from them. So for 5 weeks, they don't need to be any of those things. We need to just be kind, civil, loving, and gentle. We can only be those things when we've got those things when we've got all of our basic needs being met. Now, I'm not talking about your big needs, I'm just basic needs being met. Then we can start to do those things with our relationship. But just for now, it doesn't need to be anything. Don't make any big decisions.
I think that in itself is massive, because I know somebody, I like to make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity, not inside of a relationship, but just a great opportunity to actually not do that. But I absolutely think right now, unless you're in an unsafe environment, and then of course you would make a quick decision. But aside from that, really, it's forced us to slow right down. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of people, that people are not used to the slowness, and everything is magnified when everything's slow, isn't it? Like you can't not see what's there.
100%. And I want to speak, I think it would be good to speak just a little bit to those people who are in relationships and they're being triggered, but they do feel healthy, whole, and capable of dealing with these things. Because some of us are in that position as well. However, if you're in that position, you probably need less support, which is why we're not going to probably spend a massive amount talking to that. But just really briefly, that is the case for some people. And if you're in that space, then, and you're wondering if you should leave the relationship, then have that conversation, you know, go through that process if you feel like you can and you should. However, I even recommend in that situation, just give it a few weeks, you know, like we really are, you might think differently at the end of 5 weeks. And if you're being triggered and you have the strength, but you don't know how to deal with it, and you want to use this actually as an impetus for change in yourselves and in your relationship, then that's also really valid. But you need to know that you are resourced enough to do that right now. And I would be hesitant, to be honest. There would be a handful of people, that I would say, sure, go ahead. But I would be hesitant and say the vast majority of people would do well to just sit and wait for a little bit and fill yourself up a little more. If you really are resourced and ready to deal with that process, make sure your partner is as well. And and then go gently and have the conversations in a sacred space. So make sure you set aside the time. You know, it's going to be on Wednesday night at this time till this time, so it doesn't go all night, and we'll have a little bit of a conversation and get some support if you need it. You know, tune into someone who can actually help you mediate that. I don't feel like we need to speak too in depth to that, Lisa.
No.
If people have questions specifically to that, if that's you and you have questions specifically to that, then just put it in the comments or send me a message and we'll talk to it.
I'm going to put my glasses on and just see if there's anything else that we need to be responding to. What I would actually love to also talk about, touch on is people who are single.
Yeah.
People who are single in lockdown.
That's a tough place as well. I mean, no more tough than being in relationship, but certainly no less tough either. I think the greatest issue for single people at the moment is feeling lonely, of course, you know, and not having physical touch. It's a big one. I was speaking with my husband, with Warwick, the other night, saying how 100%, if I was on my own in this lockdown and I was living in a house that allowed it, I'd be getting a pet. If you're allowed to and you don't hate animals, get a pet, because that, and I'm dead set, because they bring, and there's another life.
That was the last thing I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say, anyway, I won't even share what I thought you were going to say. That's so funny.
Get a vibrator.
You what?
Did you think I was going to say get a vibrator?
Something along those lines. I was like, well, of course you would, whether you're in relationship or not in relationship. I think that's really important right now. But anyway, but a pet, okay. Yes, of course. For connection, for companionship, I get it.
Touch.
I wonder what the statistics are on that.
A lot of people have been adopting dogs and things. And there are a lot of pets that actually need adoption at the moment, because some of the shelters where volunteers are going in, they're not allowed to go in and take care of them. So it's a win-win situation. I mean, you know, I do feel like I should be responsible and say a pet is for lifetime, not just for Christmas kind of thing. But if you can, I would seriously consider getting a pet. I would have said vibrator, but I just assume, especially if you're single, you'd have one, for goodness sake.
No, but then I also thought you were talking about, well, I would actually still be getting, you know, meeting with people. I was like, that's not Belinda.
No. You
weren't advocating for that.
No. And so yeah, get a pet if you can. That's a big thing. That's not something that you just go, oh, I better also get a pet, I'll go get one. But you know, it's something to consider. And then on the other, but as well as that, some people are still trying to date. And I'm just going to be really, really upfront and say, just give it a break for a few weeks. It's not forever. It's not going to put you back that much if you just don't go on a live date for 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks. It's really not the big deal. Now, that's not true. Go ahead.
I was just interested because.
What'd you say, Lisa?
Yeah, well, I was interested to know. So if you're single, do you think? Can you hear me, Belle? Yeah. Yeah. If you're single and okay, you're obviously not live dating, but is it also not a time that you can actually create or develop a relationship with somebody from afar? I think it actually could be a really nice thing as opposed to just jumping in and meeting them and, it all being over really quickly.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, some people are still trying to meet up in like face-to-face dates. And I just have to say, just don't do it. It's just not worth it. But being online, yes, absolutely. But what you said is absolutely true. I mean, why not enjoy that interaction, get to know some more people? But the thing is, I have to say, I've been doing this for 20 plus years, working with people, dating and in relationships. And as soon as I get a client that comes to me and says, oh, I'm not really serious about it, I'm happy to just be casual and just playing around, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Because most people can't take it not seriously and just have fun online. Most people really get involved and they get offended and they get triggered, even, just as much as when you're in a relationship. Now, these single people are also in an unhealthy environment, living in a way that is not feeding their psyche. And so it is highly likely, it's going to be a highly volatile situation if you're online dating, because you've got all this shit going on for you and your psyche. You're feeling abandoned, you're feeling scared, you're feeling alone. So you get on and you're having a chat with someone and then they don't get back to you. And you're like, oh, I'm not going to think about it. But yes, you are going to think about it, because what else are you going to do? You're doing the dishes, you walk to the kitchen, you think about it. You go to the toilet, you think about it. You check, you keep checking.
Crazy.
You remember what it's like when you were dating, right? Like, it's obsessive at the best of times.
Yeah, and there was distractions then.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. And the expectations and the desire from this basic stranger is amplified.
Massive. So this is one of the biggest issues that singles are facing at the moment, is that actually, yes, it seems like a great idea. Let's just play with people online. And for those people, those very few people, I would say there's 0.001% of women, at least, who can do that. Men tend to be better at it. Then go for it. But for most women and people who are single right now doing that online dating thing, it's a quagmire of mental anguish. And so how do you deal with that? How are they going to deal with it? How are you going to, be in a happy and healthy dating environment right now? One thing is, try not to, if you can just give it a break, have a break. But I understand that that's not easy when you're single, because you want to connect with people. But all the same things that we spoke to before, make sure you're connecting with your friends, make sure you're having group conversations, do things that are fun for you, do all that kind of stuff. That's really important. Keep up with your hobbies, all the same things. And then, get online if you can, but you have to make a contract with yourself, just like that contract we have with that part of ourselves, in 5 weeks, that are similar contract. You need to say to that part of yourself that I'm going to only check this many times a day, or I'm only going to check this many times a day. And you need to then, if there's somebody that you're interested in that you're actually connecting with, then I recommend you give them, so you're on your dating apps, and then you might have WhatsApp. Some people don't like to use their phone number, but let's say WhatsApp is what you give the number to people. You give your WhatsApp to people who you're interested in talking to off the dating apps. So, but you don't give them, and then you stop looking at the dating apps to see if they've called you. So do you know what I mean? When you've actually connected with someone on a dating app, then you keep going back to the dating app, and it's really easy to then look for the other people. And is there anybody else called? So if there's someone that is going to talk to you more regularly, then you give them your WhatsApp, so you're not always on the dating apps. You only check those dating apps, whatever the agreement has been with that part of yourself. It's going to be once a day or twice a day, or only on this day and that day. You need to set up some boundaries for yourself, and you need to be busy with other things. That's essential, because
that's key for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, especially single people on dating apps.
I know. I was there and we weren't in lockdown.
Right. And the thing is with dating apps, even with Facebook and things like that, like I don't have Facebook on my phone at the moment because we go to dating apps and Facebook. I mean, this has been measured. We've measured people's brains going on these apps, and we go there for a dopamine hit. Now, in lockdown, a lot of us are lacking dopamine. We don't have these happy, feel-good drugs in our head, being created by our own body. And so we're going to our apps constantly. And one of the things that people do with their dating apps is they go for dopamine hits. So in lockdown, you're going to be looking even more. That's why I say if you can have a break from dating while you're in lockdown, great. If you can't, or that's not what's best for you, then give yourself really clear boundaries and parameters around how often you're going to look and stick to it. And, if you can, even try and not have it on your phone constantly, have it on a device somewhere else in the house or something like that.
That's a good point. I think my partner would be very happy if I took Facebook off my phone. And given what you've just shared with me, yes, that sounds like a healthier option. Belle, is there anything else that you feel that you would like to share for anyone that's tuned in or going to tune in? Whilst you think about that, I'm just going to check it and see if there's any other questions.
This is a long live, but there's a lot of ground to cover. And I think Lisa and I will be doing a chat on the Good News Guide. We'll probably talk about some similar things in a few weeks as well, because there is a lot to cover. But I do think it's important to just speak briefly, really briefly, to one other point, and that is, yes, the most important thing to do right now is to tell ourselves we need 5 weeks to just give ourselves a break in our relationships. Second thing is we need to nurture those parts of ourselves that are being starved through the lack of healthy environment. Mm-hmm. And there is one other thing we can do to help our relationships through this time, and that is nurture the relationship as well. Now, that means, what are some things you can do for that? Well, for a lot of us, a lot of people are feeling shit and down and depressed and anxious. You don't feel much like having sex. You don't feel much like being intimate in those times. And we've got a lot going on in our head. And so we don't feel much like having a date and talking about, what do you talk about? Oh, how many COVID numbers were there today? It's hard having these connection times, right? So one of the things that we can...
I don't mean to laugh. Sorry, I don't mean to... But it's that's the reality, isn't it? That's why I'm like, I don't want to talk. Don't talk to me about COVID numbers. Not interested.
No. So having some parameters around that. So let's say at least once a week, you have a date night. And that might be Friday nights, if you're 6 o'clock, or if you whoever, if you've got kids, 8 o'clock, whatever it is, you got to make it work with your time, but you have to make it stick. It can't be, but this night I'm going to do this instead. You have to make it stick. And on date night, what do? You do nothing that's related to work or COVID or kids. And you might see they're not saying anything, but the beginning, fine. Can you watch a movie? Sure. But if you do that every time, you're not engaging in conversation. In fact, I think we could probably have a whole conversation around this, Lisa, some things to do. There's some really lovely things like get naked and under the covers and take sex off the table. For those, there's a lot of women at the moment who don't want to have sex, who aren't feeling intimate. So take sex off the table, take kissing off the table, but get naked under the covers and just talk about the day. Talk about what you want to do. Plan, because that creates endorphins, just skin to skin. And it opens up vulnerability. Plan a holiday without a date. We're doing that at the moment. We're planning an So there are things to do that help to nurture the relationship. But the reason I haven't given a lot of time to that is because it's pointless unless those environmental factors are firstly being.
I think this is something I was thinking about the other day. The ways that I can, because I was actually thinking, because obviously I'm doing the other things, how to nurture is, cooking. I mean, we're obviously inside the house, but nurturing my partner by actually choosing to cook him like a special dinner. I mean, we can do that.
Yeah.
Why not? The other thing that, what you just mentioned before about getting under the covers naked, cuddling, like to actually touch and hold each other and cuddle is a beautiful thing. And if you have a love language and that's your dominant love language is physical touch, then it's important to recognize that, or to recognize that in your partner. And if you don't feel like having sex, then to actually just hold and cuddle, I think is a beautiful thing.
It really is. And a lot of people right now are confused because they don't feel like having a conversation. They don't feel like cuddling. They don't feel like making a nice dinner. And so then they start to question, well, I don't want to do something that's against my truth. But we just need to remember that we're not in a normal living environment. And so we actually need to move beyond ourselves a little bit at the moment to cultivate a sense of connection, to cultivate a sense of intimacy, to cultivate a sense of health within ourselves and within our relationships. Don't push yourself beyond. So, for instance, like I was saying before, don't feel like you have to go and have sex if you don't feel like having sex. But, you know, take your gear off and cuddle under the covers, or give your partner a foot massage at the very least. You know, we do need to get beyond ourselves a little bit. And if you keep feeling like you don't feel like being intimate with your partner, that doesn't necessarily, and almost certainly doesn't even mean that there's something wrong right now. We're in a really tough situation that doesn't support healthy relationships. So, you know, if the only takeaway you take from this is just give yourselves some time off worrying about your relationship, thinking about it, working it out, then that's a really great thing to take away from this.
And something just came through when you were saying, so is it worth, because I'm all about communicating, and so is it worth having a conversation if you're both, or like if you're feeling that way and you feel like it's something in your space, to actually say, hey, you know what, I just want to acknowledge that I'm just not feeling that. And
what do you mean feeling what? So
not feeling like having sex, or not feeling like I can be intimate. I just want to have that conversation. I want to communicate that. So it's something that you can have a conversation about, as opposed to it's a no-go zone. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you know, there should be no-go zones when it comes to communication in a relationship. Absolutely. If you feel like it's going to create more openness, then yes, communication is key in relationship. And I mean, you know, Lisa, you've gone through my Love Coach program, that it's about how we communicate things that's important, you know. And you know, so to put it really simply, yes, if you can have that conversation without expectations, then that's going to be wonderful. If your intention to have the conversation is to give them a bit more of an understanding of where you're at, so that they're not questioning, then that's great.
That's it. It's from that place. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just, you know, some people, not just some people, but all of us sometimes can over communicate, you know, because we're not getting the response that we want, so we just keep on talking, and that is not helpful right now. And I have to say, you know, coming from the men's point of view at the moment, a lot of men are feeling that, like they're just being talked at all the time. and it's really tough for them, you know, because, you know, I mean, one of the biggest challenges is communication within relationships, because often a woman's speaking woman and a man is speaking man, and it gets missed, you know. But I want to encourage people to tune in to what we're offering. You know, all the things we're offering at the moment, they're all free, so it's not at all about, you know, getting you to sign up to something. It's just that we are giving some really great tools to help as much as we possibly can. Like I said, go to the Good News Guide on YouTube, on Facebook, and look at the people speaking there. It's not all about relationships, but it's all very helpful. My Zoom calls, monthly Zoom calls are starting up next month, so you'll be able to join in on that, and you can ask questions. It's live, get answers. What else have we got, Lisa? There's so much. There's blogs, you know, just
music. We'll put the link underneath, the music, the frequency music. I mean, it's all like rich offerings, isn't it? But it's all free. I mean, I think that's the thing. That's what's really it's a beautiful thing when we think about all that's come out of this time, is there is a lot of this being offered. Like, there is a lot of free stuff, free tools, free information, free you know, conversations to really sink into, if people choose.
And that's the thing, find what works for you. You know, you might not resonate with what I'm talking about or somebody else, and that's fine, but find someone, a resource that resonates for you, and keep dipping in. I've got mine that I keep dipping into, and that helps to keep you afloat as well. And, you know, especially with your relationships, keep listening to people who are speaking sense about relationships. Oh, I think I need to give one last little thing. Don't ask your friends for advice.
I have that. That is something that crosses over, not just COVID though.
That should be my tagline. No, I say this to people as soon as they start working with me. First thing, no advice from friends.
No. I absolutely agree with that, because that's why I have select. They're actually my friends. You select people. I'm glad there was a light. I was like, what's that? Yeah, that's so important to actually really be very mindful about the people you're asking advice from. Absolutely.
So the filter is this. Only ask advice from people, when it comes to relationships, only ask advice from people who are in a relationship that you wholly admire and would like to be in one. Because people, unless they're professionally trained, people will always give advice through their own filter, their own experiences. Even if they don't think they're doing it, they will do it. So only take advice from a professional or from somebody who is in a relationship that you would like to be in.
Yeah.
Simple.
It's a great place to tie the bow. Wow. We will never have any conversation like this again, because there will never ever be this time.
God.
Well, let's hope. Well,
no, we're just thanking God.
Yeah. But on December, what is it? I was going to say December. On September, whatever the date is, that this will be a distant memory, and we'll go back and come back to whatever we've written down and address it if need be. I think that's I think that was that's a beautiful gift for anyone that's in that space, to actually just write it down and have an agreement to come back at that time. And
I tell you what, how about we make a date, Lisa, that, you know, at the end of this, whatever, September 19, I think it is, let's do a conversation, and we'll invite everyone to come, and they can bring their triggers that they've written down, or they can send them in, and we'll talk to them, and we'll talk about what to do now.
Okay, awesome. I love that.
Okay,
great timing, because my teenage boys have just walked in the door. So as it's Sunday and it's lockdown
totally.
in Melbourne. Thank you for all of you that joined us today. I don't think there were any questions. There were just some beautiful comments. So Belle, thank you for inviting me. And I'll pop the link. I'll give you the link for Signs Music. And he's on Spotify and Apple Music and a whole host of other streams. So
amazing. Thanks so much, Lisa.
I loved it. I always love being in conversation with you.
Love you, baby.
I'm full for the day now.
Yeah, me too. Let's go and love our families up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.
Beautiful.
Everybody, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye.